Welcome to Through the Bible with Pastor Michael, a podcast from First Baptist Church in Mustang, Oklahoma. Here's Pastor Michael.
It is May, day 19. We are looking today at 1 Samuel 20, 21, and 22. So we'll jump right in with 5 observations from the reading today. David fears Saul wants to kill him, and so he flees. One of the questions, and we'll get to this in a minute in our application, but we ask ourselves, why is it that David is fearful of Saul? Why does he think Saul is wanting to kill him? What has David done that has earned distrust from Saul? And that's a question that's important for us to answer, because the answer is, as we looked at yesterday, Saul's thought process here is completely jaded by his jealousy and his envy. It's not that David has done wrong by Saul. It's not that David has acted in a way that Saul should be threatened, but because of Saul's jealousy and his envy, his anger is intense. And when you're living life based on jealousy and envy, as we looked at yesterday, you make decisions that don't make any sense, and those decisions you make have a massive impact on those around us. And so David fears that Saul wants to kill him, not because David has done anything wrong, but nevertheless, it's the situations he is in, so he has to flee. Number 2, after 2 days of not showing up to eat, Saul was suspicious, and so he then tried to kill Jonathan, and Jonathan signaled to David that Saul was wanting to kill him. Because Saul is so jealous of David, he burns with anger and rage when David doesn't show up for that second day for the meal. And then in his anger, he even hurls a spear at Jonathan. And again, we just see this same point being made over and over again, that when we're not thinking right, when we're not living with a godly perspective, and instead are fueled by selfish ambition and pride and envy and jealousy, our decisions have an awful impact on those around us. So it's not just David that's now being threatened. Saul threatens Jonathan as well. A third observation is that David flees to Nob, and Ahimelech, the priest, receives him, feeds him holy bread, and then gives him Goliath's spear. We'll come back in a moment to the significance of this part of the story. A fourth observation, David flees to Gath, a Philistine city, and then acts as if he is insane. It really is a sad part of David's life here. Here was a young man who, in boldness for the glory of God, went and fought Goliath, killed him, defended the honor of God, had courage and bravery where the others older than him did not. He is then esteemed and respected by those in the land. He is chosen to be the next king of Israel. And while things in his life seem to be getting better and better, and he's rising up, up, and up, what we also see now is he is on the run because Saul is so angry, wants to kill him. And now David finds himself having to pretend to be insane because his life is in such turmoil now. A fifth observation is Saul found out what Ahimelech did for David and ordered him to be killed, which Doeg the Edomite did. So what we're seeing here in chapter 22 is just what happens when envy runs unchecked. No one is safe from somebody who is driven and fueled by envy and by anger and by jealousy. So 5 applications for us today. Number 1, sometimes people suffer persecution for no fault of their own. This is a sad reality of life, but one that we have to recognize. Sometimes people are in trouble because of their actions, Sometimes people are in trouble because of somebody else's sin. That's what we find here. David, at this point with Saul, is not guilty of anything that should have earned um, Saul's anger. But as we just looked at, sometimes people do suffer persecution, and it's not for fault of their own. Maybe that's been true for you. Hopefully, you've not had somebody chasing after you to kill you, but maybe you've had somebody in your office who has turned against you. Maybe you have someone in your family who has turned against you. Maybe you've got somebody at your school, if you're a student, who seeks your demise, who is willing to lie about you, to insult you, to exaggerate things about you. And those things are hard and they're painful, and it's disappointing and frustrating. But we just have to understand, we have to recognize that we live in a fallen world that's filled with sinners, and when those sinners are able to do things their own way, the result sometimes are those who have done nothing wrong find themselves being persecuted. Doesn't make it easy, but we just recognize that's life on this fallen world, and we need to be prepared for that and not surprised by it. Number two, kind of a continuation of what we've seen these last 2 days, anger leads to hasty, foolish decisions. We saw yesterday how envy and jealousy led Saul to foolish decisions, and today we see that anger and that jealousy spilling over into anger and really rage. And rage and his anger here continues to lead him on the path of very foolish and hasty decisions. And so what we want to make sure of in our life is that we're not being driven by anger. We don't want to respond in anger. The Bible tells us in Ephesians, quoting from the psalmist, "In your anger do not sin." Now, in the case of 1 Samuel, what we're reading, Saul is not angry at the right reasons in the right way. But it's possible for you to be angry for the right reasons in the right way. But even when that's true, in your anger, do not sin. And we don't want to make decisions based on our anger. We don't want to make decisions that are hasty and foolish and selfish. Decisions made out of trying to seek revenge does not go well for us. And so instead, if you find yourself angry, take that to the Lord. Seek reconciliation, seek forgiveness if you've harmed someone, try to forgive someone else if they've harmed you. As we've looked at in a couple of books ago when we were reading in Romans, as much as depends on you, live in peace with all men. You don't want to indulge anger. You don't want to be content to go through life being an angry person. You're not going to make good decisions when you're filled with anger. We make hasty, rash decisions when we're fueled by anger, and so we don't want to do that. Number three, we read the Old Testament and New Testament because both are for our good. So we see that today in 1 Samuel 21, 1-9, where David goes to the tabernacle and he's fed the holy bread. Well, Jesus is going to reference this very event in Matthew 12, 1-8. And so in Jesus' life, he obviously knows the Old Testament and is using it for his teaching, using it to help guide people. And so for us, even as people that are New Covenant Christians today, we would do well to know the Old Testament. That's why we're reading it this year. That's why we're studying. That's why often we gather here like this, having read Old Testament books. It's not just about learning history and names and dates and events. It's about learning theology and learning doctrine, learning the character of God, learning more about the nature of man. And so the Old Testament and New Testament are for our edification. The writer of Hebrews says things written long ago are for us. We want to read them and understand them. Without understanding 1 Samuel 21, you can't understand Matthew 12. And so it's important for us to study and know our Old Testament and New Testament. A fourth application, there will always be people eager to do whatever it takes to get in favor with powerful people. We see that today with Doeg the Edomite, who is all too eager to do whatever it takes to get in good with Saul the king. There's always going to be people who are willing to do that, people who are willing to betray somebody else if it would make it a promotion for them. Again, that's disappointing and hurtful when that happens, but don't be surprised by that. Don't be caught off guard by that. Don't be overly shaken when the sin of other people is made manifest. And sometimes that impacts you and hurts you, but it's not about making it right or okay, but we know that, we recognize that, and we're not going to be overly shaken by the reality that sinful people will often do whatever it takes to help and elevate themselves. And then a final application today, don't be surprised when it appears evil men have won. Looks are deceiving. Don't be surprised when it looks like evil men have won. There are many times in the scripture, including in our reading today, where it looks like Saul wins. There are times in our life where it looks like evil wins. Don't be surprised when it appears that way, but remember, looks are deceiving, and in the end, righteousness will prevail. A final brief summary of the end of Proverbs chapter 27, verses 15 to 27. We are to help strengthen others. We get the very well-known verse, Proverbs 27, verse 17. Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. And so we take away from this short section of Proverbs 27 that we are to live our life striving to strengthen other people. It's not just about us, not just about our life, but what can we do in service to other people to help them, to strengthen them, and in return, how can we have someone else help us and strengthen us? So we don't live life on an island by ourselves. We seek to strengthen others as we seek others to strengthen us as well. All right? Be blessed today as you read and study.